Every decision you make can define your future, and few examples are as impressive as that of a man who, starting from nothing, conquered the world. From the darkest corners of poverty to the heights of global power, this is a journey that defies all expectations. But how do you build an empire in the midst of chaos? Today, we're going to uncover every step that turned an orphan into a living legend of power and influence. Get ready to discover what it really takes to turn adversity into success. Number 1. Childhood and poverty. Imagine a vast, cold region where life wasn't easy. This is how the story of Roman Abramovich begins, born in 1966 in Saratov, Russia. His life was marked by tragedy from the very beginning. He became an orphan at the young age of 3. For any child, this would be devastating. But Roman showed impressive resilience. Raised by his relatives in the inhospitable Republic of Komi, one of the most remote and harsh places in Russia, poverty was a constant in his life, shaping his character from a young age. The image of a young Roman running through the streets of a frozen town, with a crunch of snow under his feet and empty pockets, is a powerful metaphor for his future. While other kids dreamed of games and treats, Abramovich dreamed of escaping that reality. The harshness of life taught him lessons that, while cruel for a child, turned out to be crucial for the mogul he would become. From that early age, the struggle for survival was in his DNA. Poverty didn't weaken him, it strengthened him. Sometimes, the most powerful people start with nothing but a burning desire to change their circumstances. And that's exactly what Roman did. They begin with nothing more than a burning desire to change their circumstances. And that's exactly what Roman did. He knew that to escape poverty, he had to seize any opportunity that came his way. Thus began the journey of a boy who went from darkness to light, and from lack to wealth. But this wasn't an instant transformation. It took years of sacrifices, lessons, and mistakes. Number 2. First steps in business. Abramovich, an ambitious young man, he didn't start his business empire in fancy offices or with high-profile connections. In fact, the start of his business career is as peculiar as it is fascinating. Who would have imagined that the future oil mogul of Russia started out selling rubber duckies? Yeah, that was his first foray into the world of commerce. During his military service, Abramovich sold these little toys. And although it didn't seem like the most promising business, it was the springboard that launched him into the business world. The Russian army not only disciplined him physically, but it also provided him with a platform to test his business skills in the least expected place. Young Roman did not attack enemy lines or plan military operations. Instead, he was carrying a box of rubber duckies, looking for customers among his fellow soldiers. Abramovich's start was a business lesson. Selling rubber duckies honed his business skills. Selling rubber duckies wasn't just a way to make a living. It was an exercise where he honed his negotiation, sales, and inventory management skills. Everything you need to be a successful entrepreneur was present in that simple act. Here, in the military barracks, he learned lessons about supply and demand. Everything you need to be a successful entrepreneur was present in that simple act. Here, in the military barracks, he learned lessons about supply and demand, and how to adapt a product to the needs of his limited market. For some, a rubber duck might have been a simple toy. For Abramovich, it was the first step in building his future empire. Number 3, he worked in the mechanical industry. After his military service and his foray into the world of commerce with rubber duckies, Roman Abramovich didn't rest or settle for less. His next step took him into the hands of the mechanical industry. Imagine a young man with grease-stained clothes, working long hours in a local factory. This wasn't the dream for many, but for Roman, it was an invaluable learning ground. Mechanics wasn't just a physical job, it was the next step in his climb toward business success. Mechanics wasn't just a physical job, it was the next step in his climb toward business success. Abramovich spent hours working with his hand, understanding the inner workings of machines and how to keep them running. This type of work, while mundane to some, gave him a deep understanding of the importance of processes and efficiency. He learned that, just like a machine, businesses also need careful attention and maintenance to keep them from falling apart. While others saw a routine future in the workshop, Roman saw beyond tools and machines. He knew this was just another step on his path to something bigger. He worked long hours, not just to get by, but to soak up everything he could about the working world. The gears, the oil, and the machinery were a metaphor for what was to come. Big businesses that required precise management and adaptability skills. Number 4. Studies in Moscow and first opportunities. As Abramovich left his factory job behind, his gaze turned to a place that symbolized opportunities for ambitious Russians of the time. Moscow. With his mind set on the future, he decided to study at the Guggen Institute of Oil and Gas in the capital of Russia. This wasn't a casual decision. Abramovich knew that oil and gas were the economic engines of the country, and that those were the real opportunities to create wealth. While other students focused solely on their books, Abramovich already had a bigger plan in mind. While studying, he managed to get a job with a Swiss company called Renacom, which traded in raw materials. This is where he began to understand the dynamics of a changing market. And how could he take advantage of those fluctuations to his benefit? It wasn't just any commercial job. He was in the heart of post-Soviet Russia, a place where fortunes were made overnight. The 90s in Russia were a time of rapid and extreme changes. Moving from communism to capitalism meant that the rules of the game were constantly evolving. And Abramovich, with his sharp mind, knew how to take advantage of that transition. Instead of following the established norms, he adapted and looked for the gaps in the system. His mantra was simple: no risk, no story. Number 5. First profitable businesses. In 1988, with the winds of change blowing in the Soviet Union, Abramovich saw his first big business opportunity. Along with his first wife, Olga, he started a doll manufacturing business. Now, when you hear that someone like Roman Abramovich started out making dolls, it might sound strange, but this was the first important step that would lead him to amass his fortune. In a country where opportunities were limited, doll manufacturing turned out to be a surprisingly profitable venture. The dolls weren't just in demand. Abramovich knew how to maximize profits by finding cheap suppliers and achieving efficiency in production. This business was one of his first major successes, and although it was far from the oil and gas empire he would later build, it laid the foundation for his entrepreneurial prowess. The decision to make dolls may seem trivial, but this is where the true ability of an entrepreneur is demonstrated, knowing when and how to capitalize on an opportunity, no matter how small it may seem. Abramovich understood that business wasn't always about glamour. It was about spotting what the market needed and delivering it efficiently. Selling dolls allowed him to make his first fortune, which he would later use to fund his future projects. And delivering it efficiently. Selling dolls allowed him to make his first fortune, which he would later use to fund his future projects. Number 6. Investment in oil. The real turning point in Roman Abramovich's career came when he started getting involved in the oil industry. This was the moment he left behind rubber duckies and dolls and stepped into the world of serious business, where the profits could be astronomical. In 1990s Russia, oil was synonymous with money, power, and opportunity, and Abramovich knew exactly how to take advantage of it. The story is as bold as it is impressive. During the chaotic post-Soviet period, Abramovich was buying barrels of oil for $1 and selling them for 100. No, it's not a typo. That incredible price difference is what allowed him to amass a fortune quickly. This profit margin was so significant that he soon became one of the richest men in the country, and this business would be the foundation upon which he would build his empire. The young businessman did not just limit himself to buying and selling, but also learned to negotiate with the big names in the sector. His contacts and persuasion skills became his best allies. Abramovich understood that oil wasn't just a commodity, it was power, and those who controlled it held a significant part of Russia's economy at that time. Number 7. The purchase of Sidneft. One of Roman Abramovich's boldest moves came when, together with his partner Boris Berezovsky, he bought the oil company Sidneft, one of Russia's largest oil companies. This wasn't just any deal. It was the kind of deal that changes people's lives and redefines economic power. But the most surprising thing was the price. Just $100 million each for half of the company. 100 million might sound like a huge amount to many. But in terms of one of the largest oil companies in Russia, it was a real steal. How did they manage to get such a big stake for so little? This is where Abramovich's cleverness shone. The Russian economy in the 90s was a total mess. State-owned companies that had once been the pillars of the communist system were being sold to the highest bidder under the Loans for Shares agreement, a plan that allowed entrepreneurs to lend money to the government in exchange for shares of valuable state-owned companies if the government couldn't pay back the loans. Abramovich, always ready to spot an opportunity, didn't let this one slip by. This deal was as shady as it was brilliant. The exact details of the deal aren't entirely clear, but what is known is that it involved a series of financial maneuvers, political influences, and, as Abramovich would later admit, bribing government officials and mobsters to protect his interests. It was the Wild West of Russia, and Abramovich was playing the game better than anyone. Number 8. Relationship with the Kremlin and political rise. Abramovich's business success wasn't just due to his ability to spot opportunities in the market. He was also a master at cultivating political relationships. By the late 90s, Roman was no longer just another businessman. He had become one of the trusted men of the Kremlin and, more specifically, of the Yeltsin family. This relationship was crucial for his meteoric rise in the business world. In post-Soviet Russia, having good relations with the right people in government could make the difference between success and failure. Abramovich wasn't invited to formal meetings. He was close to receive an apartment inside the Kremlin, a sign of trust. Abramovich was in the inner circle. Abramovich wasn't satisfied with being a friend of power. With Boris Yeltsin's health deteriorating, he anticipated changes and sought to maintain an ally. However, Abramovich wasn't satisfied with just being a friend of power. He knew that with Boris Yeltsin's health deteriorating, the country was about to go through a major political change, and Roman didn't want to be left without an ally in power. In one of the most strategic decisions of his life, Abramovich recommended an unknown former KGB agent as Yeltsin's successor. That man was Vladimir Putin. Number 9. Governor of Chicago. In the year 2000, when Roman Abramovich had already established himself as one of the most influential businessmen in Russia, he decided it was time to do something different: enter politics. While other oligarchs were content to amass wealth, Abramovich decided to run for governor of Chicago, a remote region in the far east of Russia, known for its extreme cold and sparse population. For many, this decision was disconcerting. What was a billionaire tycoon doing in one of the most inhospitable regions of Russia? However, for Abramovich, this move made sense. Not only was he consolidating his political influence, but it also gave him the chance to give back to the country that had helped him rise so quickly. And he did it in a monumental way. Abramovich invested $1.3 billion to enhance Chicago's infrastructure and services. This was not just charity. It showed his power and earned local and elite respect. And the services of Chicago. This wasn't just a simple act of charity. It was a demonstration of his power and a way to earn the respect of the local population and, of course, the Russian political elites. Under his leadership, the region saw significant improvements in areas like health, education, and transportation. Number 10. Purchase of Chelsea Football Club. In 2003, Roman Abramovich made one of the most surprising acquisitions that would forever change the face of English football. With a bold move, he bought Chelsea Football Club for £140 million, an amount that at the time seemed exorbitant, but would turn out to be one of the smartest investments in the world of sports. What followed was a revolution not just in the club, but in the landscape of European football. Abramovich didn't buy Chelsea just to be another spectator. From day one, he had big plans for the team and spared no expense to turn his dreams into reality. Immediately after the acquisition, the club embarked on an ambitious expansion project. Abramovich invested in the construction of a state-of-the-art training complex in Cobham, Surrey, and it didn't take long for him to sign some of the best players in the world. Money was no obstacle for Abramovich, and that became clear in his first full year as the club's owner. Chelsea's wage bill increased by 110%, reaching the astonishing figure of £148 million. And he wasn't just spending on players. He also hired the best coaches to ensure the club achieved success on the field, reaching the astonishing figure of £148 million. And he wasn't just spending on players. He also hired the best coaches to make sure the club achieved success on the field. Number 11. Expansion into multiple sectors. Although Abramovich is mostly known for his investments in oil and his ownership of Chelsea Football Club, his business vision was much broader. He didn't limit himself to just one industry. Once he started amassing wealth in the oil sector, he quickly diversified his investments, expanding into other key areas of the global economy. He didn't limit himself to just one industry. Once he began to accumulate wealth in the oil sector, he quickly diversified his investments, expanding into other key sectors of the global economy. One of his shrewdest moves was to invest in the steel industry. Abramovich became a major shareholder in Ibras, one of the largest steel producers in the world. This investment was not only profitable but also strategic, as it allowed him to consolidate his influence in a sector essential to both the Russian and global economy. But he didn't stop there. He also invested in the aluminum industry, acquiring stakes in Highland Gold and Rusal, one of Russia's largest aluminum companies. These investments allowed it to diversify its portfolio and minimize the risks associated with relying on a single industry. Abramovich understood that the key to long-term success was to diversify his assets, and he did it masterfully. It didn't matter whether it was oil, steel, or aluminum. Abramovich knew how to capitalize on each investment, solidifying his status as one of the most powerful and diversified entrepreneurs in the world. Number 12. Properties and a luxurious lifestyle. Roman Abramovich's lifestyle isn't just luxurious, it's extraordinary. With a fortune built in oil, steel, and other sectors, Abramovich has used his wealth to acquire properties and assets that rival those of royalty. One of the jewels of his real estate empire is a mansion valued at $1.184 billion, located in the prestigious area of Kensington Palace Gardens in London, colloquially known as Billionaires Row. In addition to this property, he also owns a 15-bedroom mansion in the same area, a statement of opulence that few can match. But his real estate empire isn't limited to the UK. In addition to this property, he also owns a 15-bedroom mansion in the same area, a statement of opulence that few can match. But his property empire is not limited to the UK. Abramovich owns a property on the French Riviera and a 70-acre estate on the island of St. Barts. Additionally, in Tel Aviv, he owns the Barzano Boutique Hotel, a purchase he made in 2015 for 100 million Israeli shekels. To add to his collection of properties, in 2020, Abramovich set a record by purchasing a property in Pichua for 220,000 Israeli shekels, roughly $26 million. For 220,000 Israeli shekels, roughly $26 million. Number 13. Donations to Jewish causes. Roman Abramovich is not only known for his lavish lifestyle and smart investments, but he is also an active philanthropist, particularly in supporting Jewish causes. Over the last 20 years, Abramovich has donated more than $500 million to Jewish organizations and projects around the world. These efforts are not only a reflection of his commitment to the Jewish community, but also of his desire to use his wealth to promote the well-being of others. One of the most notable projects that Abramovich has supported is a program in Israel that brings together Jewish and Arab children to play soccer. This project, which benefits more than 1,000 children each year, is an effort to promote peace and coexistence between communities in a country often marked by tensions. For Abramovich, soccer isn't just a sport. It's a powerful tool for building bridges and bringing people together, no matter their backgrounds. In addition to his donations for soccer, Abramovich has funded significant initiatives in education, health, and welfare within the Jewish community. His support for the construction of schools, hospitals, and community centers has had a tangible impact on the lives of thousands of people. He has also donated to Jewish museums and funded cultural projects that preserve the rich history of the Jewish people. Number 14. Sanctions and sale of Chelsea. In March 2022, Roman Abramovich's life changed dramatically when he was sanctioned by the European Union and the United Kingdom. These sanctions were due to his close relationship with the Kremlin and, in particular, with Vladimir Putin. Abramovich was accused of having financial ties to Putin and benefiting from his closeness to power in Russia. As a result, all his assets in the United Kingdom and the European Union were frozen, which led him to make a painful decision to sell Chelsea Football Club, the crown jewel of his sports empire. On March 2, 2022, Abramovich announced that he would put Chelsea up for sale, a decision he made for the good of the club, the fans, and the employees. The news shocked the football world, as Abramovich had owned Chelsea for almost 20 years, and under his leadership the club had achieved unprecedented success. However, the sanctions made it impossible for Abramovich to continue as the team's owner. The sale of the club was finalized in May 2022, with Todd Boehly and Clear Lake Capital Group buying Chelsea for a total of $5.3 billion. Despite the circumstances that led to the sale, Abramovich made sure that Chelsea was left in the hands of owners who promised to continue his legacy of success. Number 15. Incidents in the peace negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. In March 2022, amid the rising tension between Russia and Ukraine, Roman Abramovich took on an unexpected role as a mediator in the peace negotiations. Despite being known for his success in business and his luxurious lifestyle, Abramovich had also cultivated international relationships, which allowed him to take part in the peace talks held in Istanbul. However, this episode was not without its dramatic incidents. While Abramovich and two other negotiators were trying to mediate the tensions between the two countries, a strange and concerning incident occurred. The three negotiators reported symptoms of poisoning after one of the negotiation sessions. Among the reported symptoms were eye pain, swelling of the eyes and skin, as well as skin peeling. This incident raised alarms among those present, and there was suspicion of a possible sabotage attempt in the talks. Although the culprits were not definitively identified, the incident served as a reminder of the dangers and complications involved in dealing with such delicate political matters. Despite this apparent poisoning, Abramovich continued his involvement in the talks, showing a resilience that is not only evident in his business life, but also in his ability to stand firm in critical situations. 16. Legal issues and lawsuits. As the sanctions imposed by the European Union and the United Kingdom began to seriously affect Roman Abramovich, he didn't just sit back and do nothing. In 2022, he decided to take legal action to try to overturn those sanctions, filing a formal lawsuit against the European Council. Abramovich claimed that the sanctions were unjustified and that there was not enough evidence to directly link him to the actions of the Kremlin. However, the courts were not favorable to his case. In December 2023, his lawsuit was dismissed, meaning that the sanctions would continue to affect his assets and his ability to do business in Europe and the UK. This was a tough blow for Abramovich, as the restrictions had frozen much of his assets, including his valuable real estate holdings and access to international funds. This legal process was closely followed by international media, and many wondered if Abramovich would be able to reverse the sanctions, given his power and influence. Despite the legal setbacks, Abramovich continued to keep a high profile in business, looking for other ways to safeguard his investments and carry on with his business life in other parts of the world. Number 17. Relationship with Putin and corruption allegations. One of the most controversial aspects of Roman Abramovich's life has been his close relationship with Vladimir Putin. Abramovich has been accused of having close ties with the Russian president. Some see him as a businessman who leveraged Kremlin ties for wealth. UK/EU sanctions in March 2022 alleged him as Putin's bagman. For some, Abramovich is not just a successful businessman, but also someone who has used his closeness to the Kremlin to amass his fortune and maintain his power. These accusations peaked in March 2022, when the sanctions imposed by the UK and the European Union included a formal allegation that Abramovich was acting as Putin's bagman. According to intelligence reports, Abramovich helped facilitate transactions and manage financial resources on behalf of Putin, a charge Abramovich has vehemently denied. Over the years, these accusations have been a constant shadow over his career. At various times, it has been reported that Abramovich used his influence in the Russian government to secure favorable contracts and tax benefits. The UK government also accused him of receiving tax exemptions and reduced rates for the companies in which he had stakes. Number 18. Career in the Russian business world. The 90s in Russia were a time of abrupt and destabilizing changes. The collapse of the Soviet Union left a power vacuum that was quickly filled by savvy entrepreneurs who saw chaos as an opportunity. Roman Abramovich was one of those entrepreneurs. Abramovich amassed wealth during economic change. During Russia's shift to capitalism, Abramovich quickly capitalized on privatization. Using political ties and deal-making skills, he became a leading Russian oligarch. As Russia shifted from communism to capitalism, many state-owned enterprises that were previously government-controlled were privatized, and Abramovich wasted no time in taking advantage of this transition. With a mix of political connections, strong determination, and his knack for making deals, Abramovich emerged as one of the most powerful oligarchs in Russia. His first big move was the purchase of Sidneft, the oil company that he acquired along with Boris Berezovsky for just $100 million. In the following years, the value of Sidneft skyrocketed, and this deal solidified Abramovich as a major player in the Russian energy sector. But his influence didn't stop at oil. He also invested in key industries like steel, aluminum, and telecommunications. True power isn't in what you own, but in how you build your own destiny.